all for joining us. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Dr. Marvin Dunn, one of the plaintiffs in this case. I began teaching at FIU in Miami in 1972, 4 years before DeSantis was born. And I retired as chairman of the psychology department at FIU in 2006.
All right. Am I next? My name is Leroy Purnell. I'm a professor of law at the Florida A&M University College of Law in Orlando. And I am one of the plaintiffs in this case. And I also have been teaching in this area for a long time, over 45 years. And I'm former dean at the Northern Illinois. I was former dean at Northern Illinois University College of Law, and most recently I was former dean at Florida A&M Law School. And I've been at other institutions, Ohio State as well. I also write and teach in the areas of race in the law, race and criminal procedure, personal injury law. And it's my pleasure to be with everyone this evening, and to have a discussion about these issues.
Also joining us is Dr. Sharon Austin. We will go ahead and have Johanna Dauphin share her intro, and then Dr. Sharon Austin, if you can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Johanna Dauphin. I'm a senior at Florida State University studying international affairs with a concentration in urban and regional planning. My campus involvements include serving as the political action chair of FSU's chapter of the NAACP, as well as being the events coordinator for the Society of Black Female Future Attorneys and the co-founder of FSU's Black Advocacy Institute, as well as a staff writer on the Florida State Political Review. And I'm just happy to be here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sharon Austin. I am a professor of political science at the University of Florida. I've been teaching there since 2001. I teach courses that deal mostly with African-American politics, civil rights, voting rights, African-American women's politics, and also urban politics and public law. And I also have been a voting rights expert in several cases challenging voting discrimination. And it's an honor to be here working for the fight for academic freedom.
Thank you so much, Dr. Austin. I'm going to go ahead and get us started with a list of questions for our panelists. We'll start with Dr. Dunn. Can you describe your Tell the Truth tour and what motivated you to put it together?
Oh, DeSantis motivated me to put it together. The tour involves the all expense paid overnight tour involving high school students, 14 years of age or older normally, with a parent or a grandparent. And we go to some of the places where the blood was shed in Florida in racial violence. The tours end up in Rosewood, where I own 5 acres of property. I'm the only Black person today who owns land in Rosewood. So the tours end up with the students and others who come along with us at the property in Rosewood. We go to sites from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando to Mariana, and visit these places where souls were lost. We commune, we pray, we sing, we talk to each other, and then go to the next one.
And last summer, we heard reports from teachers concerned that the state's civic training sessions, where the role of slavery was greatly downplayed in the program, was happening. How do these efforts to reframe history impact students?
They'll end up knowing nothing. I so much fear that our Black students in particular will end up not knowing of the brutality of slavery. If you ran away consistently as a slave, they would cut your foot off. Can a teacher tell us? That's a fact of history. DeSantis says we can teach the facts of history. Can we teach that? So I fear that not just Black students in our system, but white students as well, and students of other backgrounds as well, will end up with a vacuum of history in terms of what African Americans have gone through in this country. It does not surprise me, I must say, that Hispanics don't identify with this history. That we have Cuban Americans in Miami, for example, and all over Florida, who do not identify with this history. And why should they? They just got here last week, as my father would say. They don't resonate with this history. This is our history. So you take someone like the Secretary of the Commissioner of Education for Florida, Manny Diaz. What does he know about our history? What does DeSantis know about our history? Where did they learn it? So that they can say this is not of educational value and not. I wouldn't begin to make an assessment of what I thought was of value to Hispanic Americans, Cuban Americans in particular, in the way that these people have decided that they can tell us what is and what is not valuable in our history.
Thank you so much, Professor. Now, Dr. Austin, we have a couple questions for you. We know that Black history is American history, and that Floridian educators and students have the right to learn about our national and state history. Why is the work of this particular lawsuit essential for the future of education in Florida?
Well, the outcome of this lawsuit is essential because there is so much about Floridian history and American history that students don't learn. Students learn very little about anything pertaining to race anyway. And if this lawsuit is not successful, professors are going to be constrained in what they teach and how they teach. And that is going to be something that is disastrous in the sense that it's going to be difficult to recruit professors here. The students are not going to get the type of education that they should be getting. They're not going to learn the truth about American history. Professors are going to be constrained, they're going to be nervous, are also going to possibly face some type of punishment if students leave their classes feeling a certain way. So I think that, and finally, I just want to say that it's an example of, this lawsuit is an example of hypocrisy, because the few scholars who teach courses that deal with race are being censored, and those people are facing potential punishments. So that is going to have a huge impact on teachers. It's going to cause a lot of stress for teachers, and it also isn't fair to the students because they're not going to receive the kind of adequate education that they should be receiving.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, we're seeing more reports of banned books featuring the stories and the books of Black people and authors being removed from public school libraries and classrooms. Why should this be a cause for concern?
This should be a cause for concern for several reasons, because a lot of classic books and classic authors are being removed from shelves. Even people like Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, and even as far as at the University of Florida, one of our very prominent former professors here, his name is Ibram Kendi, is a very prominent historian. When he was teaching at UF, he won the National Book Award. He was the youngest person to ever win that award at the age of 34. And I remember we were very proud of him, and we were having a lot of celebrations to honor him because of his book. But his book is entitled Stamped from the Beginning, and it has a very comprehensive history of racism in America. That is a book that several people have pointed to as a book that's objectionable, that now will be banned. So now we're facing a possibility where his book will not only be banned from schools, but also possibly from the very university where he used to work. And then also, I have written a book that's coming out this year that uses intersectionality as a framework in talking about the experiences of Black female mayors. That book is potentially going to be banned. So even at my own university, the books that I have written will not be able to be on the shelves. Another book that I have that'll be published this year deals with racial capitalism. That also is a theory that some people object to. So that's the danger. Once you start banning books, you just never know where it's going to lead to. And that's going to mean that a lot of people, even like myself, who teach at universities will not be able to even use their very own books in their classes or have their books on shelves at our library or libraries throughout the state.
Thank you so much, Dr. Austin. Let's move over to Johanna. We have some questions for you. Florida teachers and students are at the center of this lawsuit and on the front lines of Governor DeSantis' attacks on Black history. What has been your experience as a student, and what can students learn from the diversity of thought on campus?
Well, a central aspect of my experience as a student dealing with the impacts of HB 7 are the various disclaimers that are given about the course content, whether they be given verbally, on the syllabus, or even during a class discussion. The disclaimers vary, right? So you have some disclaimers about the fact that the course content can change at any time, depending on what's going on legally, which is frustrating because we don't know if we're getting a watered down version of the courses that we signed up for. Another disclaimer that we get frequently is professors kind of having to minimize certain ideologies. For example, if we're having a conversation about white privilege or something like implicit bias is mentioned, some professors feel the need to make it seem as if these ideas are theories or opinions, but we know that these ideas are substantiated based on data and statistics and our lived experiences. So when you kind of have to make these ideas seem as if you don't have to believe that these things are true because, we don't want to offend anybody, it kind of devalues the fact that for a lot of people, they are factual. We see these things in our everyday lives, and it's a mockery of our lived experiences to make it seem as if something like unconscious bias, for example, is a theory and shouldn't be respected as the fact that it is. Furthermore, another disclaimer that I've heard in my classes is that, oh, we're not trying to indoctrinate you guys. We're just trying to explore these different perspectives and X, Y, and Z. I think that's very dangerous because it decreases the faith that we have in our education. It should be a given that we're here to learn diverse perspectives. It should be a given that we're under the impression that we're here to challenge the beliefs that we came here with. We understand that we're here to learn how to think critically and to hear things that we might not have heard back home. But when you have to say we're not trying to indoctrinate you, it makes us feel like, well, why would that be the case? So I think that these disclaimers just decrease the quality of the education that we're receiving. And to students, I would say, we deserve to get the education that we paid for. We deserve freedom to learn without constraints and censorship. And we also deserve a future that's more equitable and unified, which we can't get if people aren't exposed to the ideas that would get them to that place. So I would say that all students benefit from diversity of thought on campus. We come from homogenous communities, whether that be racially or socioeconomically. And so college is the place to come and hear things that make us uncomfortable and hear things that are contrary to what we've been taught all our lives. And we should be able to sit in that discomfort and challenge our beliefs without starting a riot or starting a fight about it. And I think that's what we've been able to do all of this time before this law. So I don't think that it was ever necessary to begin with.
Thank you so much, Johanna. We really appreciate your perspective and your message to students. We're going to switch gears a little bit and let's talk about HBCUs. How has HB 7, this is for you, Dr. Purnell, how is HB 7 impacting historically Black colleges and universities across the state?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to realize is the history and context of HBCUs. HBCUs developed because we were not allowed to be educated. And keeping people uneducated is the way you control people. So HBCUs developed as an alternative. But part of that education and what HBCUs have traditionally done is to turn around that exclusion and to allow in-depth analysis, treatment, and progress regarding a number of things, including our own history. And if there's any place where one should feel safe that where people of color, where Black folks in particular, should feel safe and free to talk and learn about education is at a HBCU. It's built right into the mission of every HBCU, so that when you have a law that says the teaching and the learning of our history is outlawed, you're basically saying that HBCU's mission is outlawed, and folks do not have the freedom to not only learn but don't have the freedom to express themselves in a safe environment. And I've likened the situation to that concept in slavery, where it was illegal for a slave to learn to read, punishable by death, punishable by dismemberment. And so when we have institutions for learning, where it's also unlawful to read and to understand, you're basically returning to what in law is sometimes referred to as a badge of slavery. This is a badge of slavery that is replaced on HBCUs in terms of their mission. And one other aspect I'll mention about that's particularly important, I think, for HBCUs, and one of the things that sometimes is missed when we talk about what laws like this so-called anti-woke act is doing, it not only impairs the ability of students to learn and for faculty to teach, but it also, particularly as regards HBCUs, impacts research and development that those institutions would do. If there's any place, any set of institutions that are dedicated across the board very often to doing the type of research and scholarship and development and refinement that's necessary for us to truly understand our history, it's an HBCU. And that is what's directly under attack by this law, these laws, and I would suggest intentionally under attack. This HB 7 makes no secret of the fact it's aimed at race. It makes no secret of the fact that it's our history that's illegal. It's our criticism and it's our voices that must be silent. HBCUs have traditionally led the fight and need to continue to lead the fight on not being silent.
Thank you so much. Also, you are a seasoned professor of criminal procedure, but the case book that you authored about racism in the criminal legal system is at risk under HB 7. What are the potential dangers of decoupling discussions of racism from understanding the legal system?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked that because, people perceive teaching about race, and in my area of law, of race and the law as sort of a specialized enclave of specialized discussion, when in fact, and the thrust of my book is that race has played a significant role in the development of law across the board. We can't understand anything about the development of criminal procedure, particularly its constitutional development. We can't understand anything about that if we don't understand and talk about the race aspect. Almost every protection that we as a society as a whole want to take for granted now in terms of our criminal justice system has a race origin. It was the second civil rights battle. So whether you talk about illegal search and seizure, well, that came to the court's attention because a Black woman up in Ohio who was being terrorized by white police who invaded her home and threw her down the stairs without a warrant. So we want to learn those things. And in my book, if we talk about that context, we talk about the context of confessions and how Black folks have a long history of having confessions beaten out of them. And so when or tricked out of them or pressured out of them. And so when we talk about the changes across the board in our legal system, we have to talk about that development. We have to talk about about mass incarceration. All those things are part of the tools that our students need if they're going to be effective practitioners. And so if we are not able to teach these lessons in their historic context and in their impact, then it results not only in students not learning, but certainly in my profession, we are going to produce professionals who are less equipped to provide the services that people need. Would you really want a lawyer who has only half the education that they need? That's the problem, and that's the problem of banning a book such as what I've written.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purnell. We really appreciate you sharing your perspective from that. We want to move this conversation to a more broader context, and feel free to chime in if there are any answers or anything that you want to share in regards to these next few questions. But we wanted to start off by sort of talking about critical race theory, understanding that critical race theory is reserved for higher education. What are some of the misconceptions you all would like to address about CRT? And yeah, go ahead with that.
That it is. This has been a very. Can you hear me? Okay. This has been a very unique opportunity for right-wing people to assail Black people, because this critical race theory, just the ring of it, the sound of it sounds threatening to white people, even though they don't know what it means. They seem to just use the words as a way of feeling threatened. And I give credit to DeSantis and those around him who have managed to have that term, which is misunderstood across the entire society, used as a weapon, as a political weapon. It's working very effectively. People who are white people who are opposed to critical race theory have no idea what it is. And if they did know what it really is, they would agree with it. The impact of racism in our society has been passed down through generations, and reparations for those wrongs have not been righted. And that's the essence of critical race theory. That our institutions are poisoned with race. There's not a single institution in Florida that has not been conceived in race. So for DeSantis and others to say, well, let's not talk about that, is stupid.
And let me add, what Dr. Dunn has said is absolutely correct. And I think that if you will go out to any of the folks who are allegedly protesting against critical race theory and ask them what it is, they really couldn't tell you. Put simply, all critical race theory, which is a theory that didn't get a name till probably 1989 out of a conference in Wisconsin. All critical race theory is a realization that racism can be systemic as well as individual. And so this point is missed by the critics, I think somewhat intentionally missed by the critics of critical race theory who want to claim that, well, you've got what they try to portray as a sort of a lunatic fringe that's out there accusing everybody of being a racist, when that is the absolute opposite of what critical race theory does. All critical race theory really does is say, look, there are consequences that result in racial disparity in our society that do not depend upon someone having the motivation, individual motivation of being a racist. When you look at something like even racial profiling, any police officer that racially profiles you, you would ask them, well, did you stop this person because they were Black? They would say, no, I didn't do that. I don't hate Black folks. But the job I have, they tell me this is what I have to do. This is how I have to stop people. And these are the characteristics that go into the profile. Well, the consequence for the person who is confronted by the police, it makes no difference whether you intended it or you didn't intend it. You still suffer from the racial profile and the danger that you put that you're put in. And when you, and I have to give the devil his due on this, when you decide to attack critical race theory and create this false monster, the best way for folks to do that is to tell the big lies. And one of the origins of the attack on critical race theory was the Heritage Foundation, and their chief spokesperson came right out in the press and said, my goal is to say something crazy and have it blamed on critical race theory. I want everything that is weird and objectionable for people to immediately think about critical race theory, which is some professors have talked about how we deal with racism differently. So they tell some very big lies, big misperception. I don't have time necessarily to go through all of them. I can if you wish, but some of the ones that are particularly amazing is well, critical race theory is bad because it's un-American. It criticizes the Constitution. Well, Constitution's been criticized by about everybody. It has been amended 26 times, so somebody didn't like it all the time. If objecting to how our legal system is functioning is a sign of being un-American, then you've got Thomas Jefferson, who's un-American, and we can go down that road on some different paths as well. You've got Thomas Paine. You've got almost anyone up to and including presidents of the United States who have criticized it. The other one that, and again, I just mentioned one other one that is really amazing criticism is the claim that it is somehow Marxist. That one is just truly bizarre. It's based on a big lie. It also suggests that Black folks cannot have any analytical theories of their own without it coming through a European context. But Marxism is based on economic class distinctions, and critical race theory was developed because it wanted to reject that as the only way in which people are oppressed. That there is a race problem in this country that goes beyond economics. If you have a PhD, if you have an MD, I don't care what type of degree you have, you can and are likely to be a victim of racism in this country. And that's all critical race theory is trying to do, is to point out how our systems cause those problems. And so the misdirects are attempts to tell folks, don't focus on how our system functions. Focus instead on fears that we're going to create, that somehow you're being victimized by crazy folks, right, left-wing communist, and all of it is, we live in a world which the big lie is apparently the way to get one's point across, and so it's important that this suit be able to fight back against that notion, and realize that more than critical race theory is at stake here. More than critical race theory, it's our whole ability to talk and teach about our history and about our future, and not just the theory of professors who met in Wisconsin in 1986.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing those misconceptions and addressing all of those as well. And thank you again also to Dr. Dunn for adding in your perspective as well. We want to get to a few more questions here. So the next question we'd like to ask is there a moment in Florida history that you think more people should know about?
Yes. Yes, they should know what happened to Harry T. Moore in Mims in 1951 when the Klan blew up his home, killing him and his wife because he was registering Black people to vote as Democrats. Moore was the most courageous man who ever walked in Florida, with the possible exception of of Osceola, the Seminole. That's the story that is buried in Florida history. And here we have one of the most courageous men who have ever been in our country. I think the more brutal the stories are, the more blood that was shed, the more heinous they were, the quicker they go underground, and we forget about them. So when you ask if that was a moment, that was a moment in 1951 that was important, because what Moore was fighting was for blacks to have political power as Democrats in Florida. In 1947, blacks began to be able to register as Democrats and therefore to become part of the power structure in the South. And that's why they killed Mr. Moore. So realizing when that political shift occurred in Florida politics is very, very important. And that's why we take our students on the Teach the Truth tours to Mims, Florida, where this happened.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add to that question? If there's a moment in Florida history that you think more people should know about?
Yes, I think that also that we understand that the role and how Florida fit into the national context in what's sometimes known as the Red Summer of 1919, that resulted to sort of the end of that Red Summer happens right here in Florida with Rosewood, but it also includes what happened in Ocoee, where Black families were murdered, and their land, and these were well-developed communities. Their land was taken from them. They were disenfranchised. Many people, or a number of people, know now about what happened in Tulsa, also during that period of time, sometimes referred to as the Red Summer. These were incidents that were happening all across the country, and Florida had its fill of those instances in which decisions were made to dismantle established Black communities, kill the residents, and take the land. And to some extent, many of the communities today in Florida then are built off of the literally built off of the blood of Black folks and Black Floridians.
I actually wanted to elaborate on that a little bit because as someone who only graduated high school about 3 years ago, I can tell you guys right now, in my entire K through 12 experience in Florida public schools, I didn't know anything about the Ocoee massacre. I've never heard of the Rosewood massacre. And those are things that I had to find out myself, over the course of the past few years, just reading on my own. So the fact that DeSantis claims that Black history is required to be taught in the state of Florida and that that's not something he's trying to take away, I think it's disingenuous to act as if we're already getting the fullness of Black history and he has no idea what we're talking about, because these are not things that happened around the country. These are things that literally happen right here in our state, right here in my city, because I live right next to Ocoee. Doesn't get brought up at all. And so I think it's very dangerous to try to restrict these conversations even more when we're already not learning enough.
When DeSantis brags, as he does now, about the state of Florida requiring the teaching of African American history, he crows about that. But of the 67 school districts in our state, how many of them actually teach or incorporate African American history into their curriculum? Maybe 3 out of 67. So what difference does it make if you have a law that says it must be done if you don't enforce it? But that is how he and the Department of Education are responding to criticisms. We require it being taught, but have not lifted a finger to enforce that law.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing those historical moments. And right before we wrap up, are there any other additional parting thoughts you'd like to give our viewers and the folks who are watching?
Yes, this is a mean, dirty, nasty political game. This is not about us as Black people. This is about DeSantis, a little man trying to become a big man using little man tactics. This is not about us, it's about politics. And if we as Black people in particular, and those who support us in this struggle, don't turn out in 2024 and turn these people into has-beens, we should take the boats back to Africa.
I'd like to add also for the audience is to remember that what DeSantis is doing in Florida is part of a pattern that's happening all across the country. There are at least 14 states that now have laws that are identical to what DeSantis put in this one. And there are a whole bunch of other states that are considering doing the same thing. It is their way of striking back and against any realization among Black folks or among white folks as to injustices in this country, and the way in which they strike back. And you can trace it all the way back to President Trump and his executive order, which also has the same language in it, is to turn the victim into the villain. And so now we're the villain, and it is now illegal for us to cry out in pain about the villainy that's inflicted on us. And you know, there's a psalm that says, you know, how can they expect us to sing glad songs when we are in fact the victims and imprisoned? And I think that we have to understand that the fight here is one that has to be fought at many levels. It has to be fought at the ballot. It has to be fought in the courthouse. It has to be fought in the classrooms. And people cannot sit by and remain silent and think that it's somebody else's fight. It is everyone's fight.
Yeah, I second all of what was said. I definitely want to put out a call of action to my fellow students and implore you guys to take voting a little bit more seriously. Here in Tallahassee, we have a very large, if not the largest population of college students anywhere else in the state of Florida, and the voter turnout rate was absolutely abysmal. So it's definitely easy to repost things on Instagram, and it's easy to take pictures when you're at a protest just to say you were there. But it doesn't mean anything if you're not walking the walk. So I would implore us to really get out the vote when we get a chance. I would also say, let's think about our future younger siblings, right? Because I don't want for my little sister and my little brother to go through the things that I went through in my K through 12 experience. And I don't want them to be dealing with the same things that we're dealing with right now. And if we can't use education to shape the next generation into people who are more socially aware and people who do value diversity and inclusion, then we're going to be right back in the same spot.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you all for joining us. As was echoed here, it's imperative that we continue to learn and uplift Black history during and after the month of February. If you know folks or students or educators who have been impacted by HB 7, please feel free to have them fill out our intake form, which you can see in the link in the comment section. Thank you again, speakers, for joining us. You all did a wonderful job. And again, thank you for joining our Black History is American History live stream event. This concludes our event.